Hey everyone, if you track Bitcoin a lot, you've probably read Vijay Boyapati's book, The Bullish Case for Bitcoin. That book again is by Vijay Boyapati, called The Bullish Case for Bitcoin. And in that book, it outlines the Gartner hype cycle, which is the technology adoption life cycle that typically drives any sort of new disruptive technology. And you know that, as is described in that book, typically about every 4 years, there is a big pullback of sizable proportions, typically exceeding 75%. Most recently, back in 2022, it was a 77.5% price correction in the price of Bitcoin. And you may be wondering, wait, we're down 30% right now. Are we going to 75% or 50%? And the answer is no, I do not think so. But of course I don't know. But let me tell you why I don't think so. So first of all, those big market corrections happen about every 4 years, which would mean the likely next one would be 2026, not 2025. So typically the huge up years are the years after the presidential election, followed by a pullback the following year. So the huge up years in Bitcoin's history were 2013, 2017, 2021, and history would predict 2025. Obviously, we have not had that huge uplift in 2025 yet. So it is not, the every 4 year big pullback certainly would not be predicted to be in 2025. Typically, we would have a all-time high late in 2025. And obviously that has not happened. And we are also not late in 2025. So even from timing, that would indicate that that is not likely. Also, the reason you get those big pullbacks is because there's an insane run in the price prior to that pullback. And that run is just not sustainable for all the reasons that are described in Vijay Boyapati's book, The Bullish Case for Bitcoin. So we have not had that big parabolic, insane, hype-driven, euphoria-laden run that would typically precede a huge pullback. So, for example, we spent 7 months trading between $55,000 and $70,000 last year. In that 7 months of just sideways grind, it basically ground out and shook out everybody that did not want to own Bitcoin, at a price that, so there was a huge rotation in ownership where, people spent 7 months with people who wanted to get off the train between 55,000 and 70,000, selling to people who wanted to get on the train between 55,000 and 70,000. Obviously, it wasn't exactly in that range. There were temporary spikes above 70,000 up to 74,000. There were also very temporary pullbacks that were just below 55,000. In fact, one day it touched for a couple of hours a price just below 50,000. But for almost the entirety of those 7 months, the price was back and forth, up and down between 55,000 and 70,000. And then after the election, the price jumped very quickly from the mid 60,000s into the mid 90,000s. And we've been grinding around for 3 or 4 months now, mostly between 95,000 and 105,000. And then obviously we get this temporary pullback that is happening right now. But again, history would indicate that when you have that much of a grind, that gives a lot of people time to get on and off the train. And typically a grind like that would not precede a major pullback. So also before a pullback, you typically get these euphoric, Coinbase is the number one app in the App Store. Everybody's buying. People are, using insane amounts of leverage. Crazy stuff is happening in the crypto markets. Companies are going public. The search volume for the word Bitcoin is going through the roof. All sorts of crazy altcoins, which the technical term is SHIT coins. That's what everybody calls them, but I won't say that out loud. So we'll use the polite term, which is altcoins, which is stuff that's not Bitcoin, that has no use value, that people just trade for the raw speculation and, gambling of it. Those typically go crazy right before a huge market correction as well. So we just haven't had virtually any of that. All of the major indicators that would indicate what's called a blow off top. We just haven't had that. We have not had a huge multi-100% crazy rally fueled by euphoria, tons of crypto mergers and acquisitions and insanity. That's the sort of stuff that becomes unsustainable, and then you get a significant price pullback. But we just haven't had that. So my prediction is, I think, 80% chance this is just a standard pullback, which will be followed by many all-time highs. But obviously there's some percent chance, I don't know if it's 10% or 20% or whatever it is, that a significant pullback is happening earlier than expected. Now, even if it does, we live in a world now with exchange traded funds. So there is a much broader marketplace of investors than there used to be. We also live in a world where there is a strategic Bitcoin reserve now in the United States, and where banks can custody Bitcoin. So there is a lot more potential buying power waiting for cheap Bitcoin with a level head and not a, trigger happy trigger finger, which is the case often with what's called retail investors, which are more on their Coinbase account, but they just really don't know what they're doing. Those people tend to buy when the price is going crazy up and sell when the price is going crazy down, which basically makes the cycles worse. And same with leverage. People, the longer it looks like the Bitcoin's in a crazy up market, you get people trading with just crazy leverage, and which means borrowed money. And that typically, comes down like a house of cards at some point. So I think all the indicators and the very most level heads in the world of Bitcoin, people like Lynn Alden, would all say that they don't think what we are in right now is a big every 4-year major price correction. They virtually all would say, if that happens, it would be likely to happen next year, not this year. And it would happen after a huge price run, not the relatively modest price runs we've had as a result of the ETFs last year and the election of Donald Trump, who is pro-Bitcoin, in November. Those price rises have been relatively modest by comparison. So I think we're in a great spot. I think it's a great time to buy as much Bitcoin as you can. And, if I can be helpful in your journey, let me know. I'm always here to help. Thanks, everyone.